What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for the UFC Vegas 12 recap. Of course, Anderson Silva made the final walk to the octagon in his UFC career against Uriah Hall, and it was unsuccessful. It wasn't what we was expecting from the Spider, or maybe it was considering his last 3-4 years inside the UFC. It's not been the best for him, but Uriah Hall came out, got the job done. But we're focused more on Anderson Silva for now. I didn't think he looked too bad considering all the factors involved. 45 years of age, multiple serious injuries. The leg break and the knee injury against Jared Cannonier. To be 45 years of age and still moving around like that shows why Anderson Silva is one of the best of all time. But that legacy, he built and spent so many years building, is crumbling almost. You could say. He moved up to. Or moved down, you could say, to 34-11. But boy, it wasn't the best performance over 5 rounds. It was a good 2-round performance and showed probably why he probably should still continue. Maybe even if that isn't the best sort of plan or idea for him. But he definitely showed that he doesn't need to retire right now. Or, it didn't look like he was done. Albeit at the UFC level, he is done at that level. But you can see him in different promotions, lower down quality of opponent. You can see him doing very well. And Uriah Hall, number 10 in the middleweight rankings, he did get 2 rounds over him, which is as ever impressive. And yeah, it's a bitter one for Anderson Silva. You would have been expecting to get a good performance, get the send off that he deserves, get that final win. But it doesn't happen in the sport. It isn't scripted like it is in WWE. We don't send out our heroes out with a win. It's a brutal sport. But, Uriah Hall, as we mentioned, he deserves all the applause. He got a job done. I thought maybe he was playing the long game, knowing that Anderson Silva is, 9-10 years is senior. And he drew him out there. Obviously, he took this fight on not too short notice, but it was a change of opponent. He was obviously meant to be fighting Yoel Romero and Jacare previously this year, with all those 3 fights being cancelled. But Uriah Hall, he definitely drew out Anderson Silva. He took Anderson Silva's best shots. Anderson Silva in those first 10 minutes, they looked okay. His striking was on point. He looked very slick. He looked like he was trying to, with all due respect, almost imitate the Anderson Silva we know and love from 10 years ago. He's trying the same things, but obviously with Father Time and his age has caught up with him, he's not able to, be as mysterious and invisible and not be hit so much. But, with being 45 years of age, he's getting hit now and his chin has taken some damage. He took 2 on the chin at the end of that 3rd round and right in the beginning of that 4th round. But that was the biggest damage we saw from Uriah Hall. It wasn't like it was a slaughter fest for 4 rounds. It was very much Anderson Silva came out, looked good for 2 rounds, and then Uriah Hall picked up the pace and showed that, he's the one in the prime of his career, whereas you say Anderson Silva is very much on that tail end. But if he wanted to go to a Bellator or 1FC, maybe even a PFL, he could very much do okay, and he might not, beat the elites. He might do in some organizations, but I don't think he beats the likes of Gegard Mousasi over at Bellator. I don't think. It's interesting, and I was listening to Ariel Helwani just before going live here. It'd be interesting to see what his need for fighting is. Obviously, it's all he knows because he's done it all his life. But is it because it's financial? Is it because he doesn't have anything else outside that of fighting that motivates him or drives him? So it depends. If it's financial, I'm sure. I'm sorry if I haven't done my research prior to this. I'm sure he could very much go into coaching, and he's probably the king of Brazil, probably him or Jose Aldo, and obviously the Gracies are the kings themselves. But if you're looking at MMA, Anderson Silva his name still carries a lot of weight, and to be trained under Anderson Silva, to be a student of Anderson, would still be something that you could look at and still hold in high regard. But if he does want to carry on fighting, so be it. I think, as we mentioned, you got some of the elder statesmen in MMA that are continuing, and I don't think Anderson Silva looked any worse than they did, especially in that middleweight division. If they want to go maybe Chelsea and do the 3-peat, Luke Rockhold would be good enough. Chris Weidman maybe. He has got a win of the Derek Brunson. Those sort of fighters that are in their late 30s and in the latter stage of their career could very much do and put on a good performance there. But it's the young guns, the the guys that learnt from Anderson Silva, learnt from watching him fight, that you don't want to be seeing him up against the Edmund Shabazians, perhaps. Adesanya went 3 rounds with them, albeit I don't know if that was Adesanya's choice, if he made it possible for Anderson to go 3 rounds, or Anderson is just that good and still at that level. But again, Anderson Silva's last 4 fights, we'll take a quick look at them. He hasn't been fighting people that almost like who haven't got a name in the sport, with all due respect. He fought Uriah Hall, Jared Cannonier, Israel Adesanya, he beat Derek Brunson, who we just mentioned, and then Daniel Cormier, Bisping, and the 2 losses to Chris Weidman, of course, which one was a knockout, and obviously the rematch was that horrendous leg break. So he's not fought, people with no names or people that you'd be expecting him to beat. It's people that are and fighters that are very good and in the peak of their power was always on the come up. Obviously, Daniel Cormier was light heavyweight champion at the time, and Bisping obviously was on his way to becoming the middleweight champion. For Uriah Hall, it must be a bittersweet one. Obviously, he's beating his idol, beating the fighter that he was looking up to coming up through, obviously, the Ultimate Fighter series. He was meant to be maybe the middleweight that everyone was looking at to take the baton from Anderson Silva and carry on that division. Obviously, it looks like now it's going to be Israel Adesanya. And we were talking about Adesanya a little later on, and his venture maybe up to the light heavyweight division. But it's an interesting win. Obviously, it does move him. It moves him onto a 3-fight win streak. Obviously, we were talking about that before. Bevan Lewis and Antonio Carlos Jr. he beat before Anderson Silva on Saturday night. And it doesn't really help him. We'll take a quick look at the middleweight rankings, of course. He's still going to be at number 10. Obviously, the new rankings come out tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon to the UK. But he's not going to move up, He hasn't fought Chris Weidman, a guest to him. He fought Anderson Silva, who wasn't ranked. And we knew going into the fight that he's probably over the hill. Now, through his next fight, Uriah Hall, he's fought the likes of Weidman and Brunson before. Brunson has a win over him, as does Weidman, I believe, but that was outside the UFC. So, for Uriah Hall, maybe you reboot that Romero fight. Obviously, Romero's 5th in the middleweight rankings, and he probably deserves that fight to be rebooked and rescheduled so he can get another shot at that to boost his way back up to title contention. Obviously, Adesanya was in the cage or in the arena last night at UFC Apex watching on for Anderson Silva's last fight. Obviously, he's an idol of the Spider, or he idolizes the Spider. Sorry, he isn't. So that must have been something to watch Anderson Silva fight for the final time. But we see Till and Hermanson fighting next month, which could take him some time off before he probably gets that shot against Adesanya. He's going to take off the next 3-4 months because of a coming child, an expecting child that his wife's going to be giving birth in January. So he's got that to come on the way. But Jared Cannonier, Uriah Hall, Jared Cannonier, I think that fight's a little bit too much outside the rankings at the moment for him. But for me, I'd put him up against Chris Weidman. Let's say that had happened in the UFC too. With all due credit, elder statesmen of the UFC, but 2 looking to rebuild their path back to that title for Chris Weidman, that is at least. But we'll have a quick look, of course, to the results in general. 61 strikes out of 112 there for Uriah Hall, and 57 out of 114 for Anderson Silva. So, albeit, we say Anderson Silva's done and dusted and shouldn't be at that level. The output that he's putting on over 4 rounds is still, particularly impressive, and he did a lot of that work in 2 rounds, I know, and those latter rounds he really did tail off. Especially in that 3rd round, he'd almost gassed out and was done at that point. It's almost a bit sorry because, had this fight been a 3-rounder, he probably would have gone away with a 2-1 win on the scorecards, potentially. I know a couple judges had it 2-1 in favour of Uriah Hall, giving him that 2nd round, of course. But yes, significant strikes, very similar. All in all, a very close fight. I know some people on Twitter were saying it was quite underwhelming. You're expecting these 2 kickboxers, these 2 absolute dons on the feet to stand off one another and see a proper battle in the striking department. But it wasn't quite like that. It was more tactical, a bit more astute, and in the end, Uriah Hall came off with the win. But yes, a good win for his resume. But for where he wants to get to in the middleweight division at the moment, a win that probably doesn't benefit him too much. It's going to be the fight he has next. As we mentioned, if it's a Romero or Jacare, it is not in the rankings at the moment either. So I don't know how much that improves Uriah Hall's title charge or title challenge if that's what his goal is. But we move on to to now the co-main event, Bryce Mitchell versus Andre Fili, and Bryce Mitchell got the win in his camo shorts, of course, moves up to 14-0, stays undefeated, and put a very good performance in against Andre Fili, who's a very technical and impressive fighter on his day, someone who you could say was almost a bit of the showboat, and it looked like Bryce Mitchell was going to get another one of those twisters in as he's done so many times before. But this one went the distance. Andre Fili showing off his nous and his experience inside the octagon, and it went the full distance. And Bryce Mitchell, you can say, almost came off looking the worst with that cut above his eye. And then obviously what he said, post octagon interview and in his post press conference as well, he didn't cover himself on glory there, but we don't have to expect political masterpieces from fighters. We're there to watch them to entertain, albeit they do have quite a strong influence to those who follow them. But yes, we'll take a quick look at the results. Of course, 100 strikes, 135 attempted there from Bryce Mitchell, 51 and 97 there for Andre Fili, 27 out of 72 significant for Touchy Fili, and then 46 out of 69 for Bryce Mitchell. Of course, you see there 7 out of 13 takedowns, which is absolutely relentless pressure there from Bryce Mitchell, from Thug Nasty, who again is someone who this fight probably doesn't push him up too much further in the rankings, if at all. Obviously, he came into this bout at 15th in the rankings. So now whether you give him an Edson Barboza, a Dan Ige, a Shane Burgos, a Sadiq Youssef perhaps. But for me personally, there's one fight that I want to see Bryce Mitchell take next, and it's someone who's not had a fight in a long while. I know if Quilter watches this at some point, he's going to clap his hands together. I want to see Bryce Mitchell versus Ryan Hall, two masters on the ground. We see Bryce Mitchell, a technical, is technically brilliant at the wrestling and the takedown. He's got some good submissions on his resume and good submission wins on his resume. But let's see him up against Ryan Hall, someone who's spectacular in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, someone who was supposed to be fighting this year, but unfortunately had to pull out due to injury. But yes, Bryce Mitchell versus Ryan Hall for me would be the fight to make in that featherweight division, which has become a little bit stacked now. It's not quite as stacked as bantamweight, but 15 up to 7. There's some great matches you make up before. The top 6 break into that top 5 who are all going for that throne that Alexander Volkanovski sits on at the moment. But for me, yeah, Bryce Mitchell, Ryan Hall, let's get an exhibition on the ground on the way, and let's see some limbs get snapped potentially. Now we move on to someone who was very heavy hitting this weekend, and it was Greg Hardy versus Maurice Greene. Greg Hardy obviously got the finish inside 2 rounds there and puts himself up to 2 wins in a row after that win against Jorgen De Castro. Bouncing back perfectly after beating Alexander Volkanovski. He puts himself up to 2 wins in this calendar year. So he's done okay, and obviously there's a lot of controversy coming into the bout. He missed weight on Friday, coming into the bout. He then had the extra hour, made it by half a pound. But, with everything, and it's hard to take everything into account that he does outside the cage. He's not a good human being. With all due credit to him, he isn't a good human being. But inside the cage, he's an absolute monster. And he shows that in that heavyweight division, he's going to be a problem. The fact that he's already been in 5 rounds with Alexander Volkov, it doesn't matter that was a short notice fight. In fact, I think that makes it almost impressive. But we see where Volkov is in that top 7 of those rankings. That's going to do him the world of good. And he's putting these absolute monsters away at that top heavy side of the division. But yeah, Greg Hardy, an absolute knockout artist, and he comes in at 260 pounds as we mentioned. But we'll have a quick look at the results. You see there, not a hugely or high output fight, but a good fight nonetheless. 17 out of 37 strikes and significant strikes there for Maurice Greene, and obviously Greg Hardy, the victor there, got a 56 out of 85 strikes completed and 46 out of 74, and that's obviously 1 takedown successful for Greg Hardy, the god of war as he's known. But yes, I was impressed by Greg Hardy. I am impressed, albeit that DQ that he suffered from his own doing. He didn't suffer that; that was his own fault. But he's still learning. It was his first UFC bout. But Maurice Greene coming in there, he could have done a little bit better. Obviously, beat Gian Delante, but he's only 1 win out of his last 3 losses. on the flip side of that, so he's on a bit of a down patch now, but he could quite easily get back on there. But Greg Hardy's going to look for a step up in competition. He's probably not quite on that top 15 yet, but he might be top 20, top 25 in the UFC at the moment. But it'd be interesting to see what he does next, whether he can get the likes of, Marcin Tybura, Blachowicz, Cyril Garner's looking to take on Junior Dos Santos. I think that fight's going to be rescheduled. But I want to see Greg Hardy against maybe Marcin Tybura. Or you put him up for someone who's coming in Tom Aspinall. Very similar experience in terms of UFC fights and UFC experience. But obviously Tom Aspinall, former heavyweight champion in Cage Warriors, he's someone who could come in there and put some good pressure and be a problem to Greg Hardy. So maybe you make that fight. I know everyone wants to see Greg Hardy up against Francis Ngannou just so Francis Ngannou can do everyone's wishes for them and put a beating on Greg Hardy, because I think the public doesn't take too kindly to Greg Hardy, and I think that's fair enough with his past. But at the same time, we have to merit his in the cage antics and his fight game, because he's getting better and better coming over from the NFL. He's scary powerful, and he is putting guys away. So he is here to stay, unfortunately. And albeit this isn't WWE, the bad press that he gets is almost a good narrative for him and for the UFC to build up. He's almost that perfect heel. But again, you have to be. It's a very thin line that you have to use that narrative with, and how many plaudits you get to Greg Hardy. But a good win for him nonetheless. And obviously another good win was Kevin Holland. Pardon me. Kevin Holland, first round TKO. They put it down at submission on the UFC website, so I think there was a third ball submission there from Charlie onto theirs. But again, Kevin Holland making it 4 wins in 2020 and looking absolutely phenomenal doing so. It is third finish out of the last 4 fights. Obviously, Darren Stewart went the distance, split decision for him, but he's someone who's had a very good 2020, and he's someone who is on my shortlist of fighter of the year. If he fights in November, December, and gets 2 wins there, I think he gets 1 more win this year. I think he could be nailed on for that. I think you could put it to Adesanya, maybe 2 title wins against Romero and Paulo Costa. You could put it up against Amanda Nunes if she gets a win against Megan Anderson in December. But obviously, with the big break we've had, it's been hard. We've not seen too many phenomenal performances, and maybe you're looking outside the UFC for fighter of the year this year. So let us know, please, and damns. Obviously, we've only got about 2 months left now this year, so those thoughts will be had over the next 8 weeks, and anyone who impresses, in these next 8 weeks, will probably favour the fighter of the year if they've had a very good 2020. But yes, Kevin Holland, he deserves now someone to test him before he can get into that 15. I think, you look at that middleweight division, the Ian Heinishes, the Marvin Vittorias, and Uriah Hall. He deserves that sort of fight now. He's probably, looking out the rankings, he's probably top 20 at the moment. And he does deserve someone in that top 15 now to almost judge where he is at the moment, because he's someone who's had competition drop out on short notice, and he's had replacement fighters come in on short notice, so he's not had the best showing of himself in terms of he's not been able to put a full plan together and a full camp, but he's still coming out there with wins and very good results. So yes, Kevin Holland, pretty much fighter of the week at the moment. Yeah, that win was phenomenal for him, as was the win that Thiago Moises got over Bobby Greene. Obviously, the main card opener, and he got a good decision win there on the night, but it was a good way to open the card. And then the prelims itself was beautiful from a fight fan. Obviously, we came in. Miles John defeated Kevin Natividad via KO in the 3rd round. Then we had Dustin Jacoby put on that fantastic performance, finishing Justin Ledet, Jason Witt with submission, the arm triangle. A very bloody fight there. Cole Williams got opened up with a beautiful elbow in that one. Sean Strickland pieced up Jack Marshman. That was probably the entertainment of the evening, with those two going back and forth. Sean Strickland almost coaching Jack Marshman. I don't think he was imitating the coaches of Jack, because he was counting down time, saying 10 seconds left, 5 seconds left. And he was almost like, why aren't you falling down at points in the cage? So it's obviously some stress there for Sean Strickland as he got his work done. But Adrian Yanez performed, obviously Contender Series alumni, only got a contract a couple of weeks ago, a month ago maybe, but came in a vicious head kick knockout for him against Victor Rodriguez, and he's going to impress and will impress further on down the line. Obviously, Contender Series returns. Corey McKenna, who got a contract in the summer, makes their debut this weekend, I believe, or next week at least. So you see the Contender Series is the path to go. Obviously, last night or on Saturday, the Ultimate Fighter will be training with middleweights and bantamweights in March. It'll be interesting to see who the coaches are. I think it could be Adesanya, maybe Adesanya, Darren Till, perhaps. But it'd be interesting. Obviously, Jorge Masvidal, Nate Diaz, I think is a good shout as well. Someone or two fighters that you can take them out of those rankings and not be too effective on their careers. Obviously, Jorge Masvidal's on that charge, that chance to get back against Kamaru Usman and get that welterweight title. But I think if he did that with the BMF, title on the line, perhaps at the end of it, the West Coast, East Coast, you can get two divisions in that way. I think it's a bit difficult because obviously maybe in the past, or I don't know, maybe a bit wrong. Usually it's a title fight like Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, like Yoni and Jacek, Claudia Gadelha. You're looking at coaches are facing off against each other. Maybe even Brock Lesnar in here. I don't know. Brock Lesnar would be a fun one. He's done it before, of course. But boy, the Ultimate Fighter returns. Unfortunately, it's not going to be in the UK or visible in the UK. I think because it was promoted on ESPN Plus exclusively. So it's going to be interesting to see how fighter fans across the world can see the new series that comes back in March 2021. Now, talking of Israel Adesanya, Dana White confirmed that he will be facing Jan Blachowicz in his next fight. He's moving up to 205 pounds. Of course, we saw both of them fight last month, or 2 months ago now, UFC 253, with Paulo Costa and Dominic Reyes, respectively. Jan Blachowicz came in the underdog of that fight after he's had a phenomenal, 4 wins. Luke Rockhold, Jacare Souza, Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, and he's finished He's finished three of those four wins on his record. So following that loss to Thiago Santos, he's bounced back in tremendous fashion. Before that, again, another 4-win streak on his record. But I won't lie, this one scares me. I do think that Jan Blachowicz may give Israel Adesanya the toughest of problems. I've got the tail of tape here. We'll look at the minute. But if you're looking at that light heavyweight division, obviously John Jones would have been the dream matchup for that light heavyweight title, and I think we might get that fight down the line soon. But it's interesting. Obviously, middleweight division at the moment is very, very stacked, and obviously we know Adesanya is almost cleaned out of the division. He's probably 2 fights away, that being Jack Hermansson and Darren Till, 2 fresh matchups at least. Jared Cannonier probably will get a shot too, and Robert Whittaker deserves his rematch. And we might see Paulo Costa down the line, but he has to improve after what was a very decisive win for Adesanya. As was the Whittaker fight, you would say, but with Whittaker being the champion previously, he deserves another crack at that. But yes, looking at Jan Blachowicz' record, Dominic Reyes he beat, and those body kicks scare me. If he does those body kicks against Adesanya, we've not seen someone go at the body of Adesanya, not attack Adesanya too much. There's very much waiting for Adesanya to move, then you counter Adesanya. This time, it could be Jan Blachowicz, the bigger man, in terms of frame size. I was looking at the tail of the tape of right up now. Adesanya is actually the bigger man. 6'4", 185 pounds. So obviously in mass he's smaller, but in height and reach he's a lot bigger than Jan Blachowicz. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage, a 2-inch height advantage as well, and obviously 20-0. He's got an undefeated record still intact. Now, whether he would lose that against Jan Blachowicz, I'd be more concerned as I would be against a Jared Cannonier or Robert Whittaker. I think Adesanya has better chance of beating both of those. Darren Till obviously would be a different story, and Jack Hermansson always, loves to cause an upset with a joker that, he loves an upset. So I would be interested to see how it goes. Obviously, he's the next in line probably to Khabib Nurmagomedov's record at 28-0 or 29-0. Sorry, now, but 8 wins is a lot to ask of Adesanya. I think he probably gets to 23, 24 perhaps, but again, fighting Jan Blachowicz does put that at greater risk, and it's a fight I'm buzzing for already. We want to see the best fights. We want to see champions face off against each other. We want to see Adesanya and John Jones. I think this way, if Adesanya wins, John Jones might be tempted to come back down, or even Adesanya moves up furthermore up to heavyweight. If he puts on 20 pounds here, he could put on another 20 pounds at going at 220, 230 perhaps, and even match John Jones. And if John Jones is the heavyweight champion at that time, maybe we can see a freeweight, 3-weight division champion in Adesanya, middleweight, heavyweight, and the heavyweight champion. But I think that maybe he's getting a bit too ahead of ourselves at the moment. But Jan Blachowicz Adesanya in January in March, I believe the fight's going to happen. Dana White has confirmed that it is what we're going to get after quite harshly saying Robert Whittaker turned down the attempt. They were going to make the rematch, but Whittaker wants to take some time off, which is fair enough. He's earned that. And he's had a good 2020 as well with 2 wins, so he's earned some time to relax and refocus for next year. Now, someone who else might be coming back next year is obviously Khabib Nurmagomedov. Obviously, he retired last week at UFC 234, but Dana White seemed pretty certain that he's still in the comeback already. Obviously, he wants to get to 30-0. His father's dream was him to get to 30-0, and Khabib Nurmagomedov could be returning. Obviously, we've got to see how the lightweight picture turns out next year. We've got McGregor and Poirier in January. It seems we've got Justin Gaethje in the mix, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson still there, Dan Hooker and Charles Oliveira, all names that within the next 12 months you can see fighting for that title, whether it's a undisputed title or an interim title, at least for now, because Dana White has come out and said that Khabib is still the champion. He still will be the champion until probably January, when that fight gets signed on the dotted line and those two step into cage. Either they could make that bout for the interim title if they want to keep Khabib around a little longer, and then maybe promote the winner of McGregor or Poirier up to undisputed. But I think it's where it gets really difficult. Obviously, the best laid plans never succeed, do they? The best laid plans always fail, is the saying. And to demand getting to 30-0 and ask to get to 30-0 when you're 29-0 and you said you're retired. We know this sport. It doesn't get like that. And I think, we don't see Khabib Nurmagomedov. We don't see 28-0. We don't see people or fighters retiring with undefeated records of that magnitude, having beaten the likes of McGregor, Poirier, Justin Gaethje already. So for me, as much as I want to see Khabib back, as much as I want to see him, return and show off the prowess he's got. 30 years of age, is still very much in his prime. I would question his return. Obviously, that ability, and it's the Floyd Mayweather effect, isn't it? He was 49-0 for so long that people was like, why don't you just come back and make it 50-0? It's a much nicer number to read, but you're playing with fate then. And with this sport, it's a lot different. There's a lot more ways of losing. As we say that to Khabib, the next fight is always going to be it's toughest opponent. But we look at this, if he fights McGregor again on a full count, that could be a very different outcome. Albeit I do think Khabib comes in the major favourite in that bout still. He beat Dustin Poirier, finished Justin Gaethje. It's only really Tony Ferguson and maybe a Dan Hooker or Charles Oliveira, but even then you'd say Khabib comes in as head favourite. So Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, if Khabib wants to come back, those two would be the picks for me. Obviously, the McGregor rematch is something that would set him up even further for life, and really nailing him is probably the greatest if he puts McGregor away twice in dominant fashion as he did the first time. If he submits McGregor again or puts McGregor away, that would probably solidify him as one of the greatest of all time, knowing what McGregor can bring. But for Khabib, I almost want to stay retired, keep that record intact. He's got Islam Makhachev, who's fighting a couple of weeks against RDA. Make the next batch of Khabib, make the next batch of fighters and wrestlers that come from Dagestan, and build on that legacy, because the legacy his father's built is so phenomenal that I'm sure Khabib will want to reenact that and make that even better and enhance that legacy even further with his own. But at the minute, he is still lightweight champion. He is still the Eagle. He's number 1 pound for pound fighter, undefeated, undisputed, and we could see him back in 2021, whether it's against GSP, McGregor, Poirier, Gaethje, even maybe Kamaru Usman, maybe thought to go up a weight class and really test himself there. But I think he'd want to do all his work in one division almost. Maybe 165 pounds. Maybe see him up against GSP and we open up a new Khabib weight class. I don't know. But yes, I'm going to leave that one there, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Drop the video like. If you're on Facebook, make sure to hit that follow as well. We're close to 2K now. We're about 300 away. So make sure to hit that follow button. Make sure to give this a share as well if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys on the next video.